Just got to confirm that we're live on LinkedIn. Should pop up any minute now. Waiting for the broadcast. All right, there we are. Okay. Great stuff. Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another CyberSec chat. Today, well, first of all, before I get into our special guest, I just want to remind you why we're doing this. We're doing this to raise awareness of cybersecurity. It's becoming more and more apparent that security is kind of being treated as an afterthought, and this is a perfect opportunity to invite people that are, experienced in this field to share their opinions. So I'm Ryan. I work for Everable. I do B2B sales and outreach. And today we've got a very special guest. I'm very excited to announce the author of the book himself, Glenn Wilson. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi Ryan, hi everybody. My name is Glenn Wilson, and as Ryan said, I'm an author. A bit more than that, I'm a DevOps and Agile security consultant freelancer. I specialize in the whole DevOps and Agile space and how security fits into that. I'm also a host of a podcast, the DSO Overflow podcast, which is a monthly podcast where we talk to guests about DevSecOps. And I'm also the co-organizer of the DevSecOps London Gathering, which is a monthly meetup that takes place in London. And again, we have guests talking about different things related to DevSecOps. Myself, my background, I started off as a developer many years ago, over 2 decades ago, and basically fell into security when I realized actually security is quite good fun. From a developer hacker type perspective, but not so fun if you're trying to solve problems in cybersecurity. So I got drawn towards processes that help us remain secure, and I got drawn into that sort of process. Hence the reason why I went down the DevOps Agile route and then security as well. I'm also a CISSP as well, so I've got a few things that to justify what I try to do.
Yeah, for sure. I've got to ask, man, just from my perspective, what does it take to get this sticker that says Amazon bestseller?
It takes a special offer, a bit of marketing, and so that sticker that Ryan has shown us, it says #1 bestseller on Amazon. If you are a bestseller for 24 hours, you get that sticker.
Nice.
Amazon has loads and loads of categories for their books, and you need to be a bestseller in 3 of those. So I think about a month after I launched the book, maybe 2 months after I launched the book, I ran a little campaign where the Kindle version was 99p, 99 cents, and a big marketing campaign from myself and the publisher. And that the numbers sold got us over that threshold in order to say that we are a #1 bestseller, and then Amazon send you the stickers. So
nice. Yeah, it's great marketing material. I mean, I was going to go over and above and just say we've got Amazon bestseller with us today, all of that, but I didn't want to
It's a bit of smoke and mirrors, but I'm really pleased with the sales of the book. Actually, the book's doing really well, which means it's getting out to the right audience.
No, it's a great book, and as you said before we went live, it's perfect for someone like me, which I'm not a DevSecOps expert. I'm learning every day, every week, and for me to understand this says a lot, because I can read it and it's in layman's terms. I can understand it, and as I'm speaking to more and more CISOs and team leads in the DevOps industry, I can speak the lingo, and I think they appreciate it, especially coming from a sales perspective. If they can have a salesman speak their language, it goes a long way. I think this is a perfect segue into one of the main questions I actually wanted to ask you today. And speaking about your book, what was it that motivated you or inspired you to write this book? There was a moment for you where you thought, I've got to address this issue,
Yeah, so the journey to the book was was not a direct, I'm going to write a book and hey, press here we go. So
Yeah.
what happened was I had a few ideas. I just finished a piece of work for a client, and I had a few ideas from that work that I'd been doing, and I started to write some blog posts, which were unpublished at the time. I just wrote them, a whole bunch of blog posts. And a colleague of mine, working in a completely different industry, someone I used to work with many years ago, we met coincidentally after a few years of not seeing each other, and he said, "I'm writing a book," and I said, "Oh, well, what does that entail?" And he told me what it entailed, and I told him that I was writing these blog posts or these articles, and he said, "Why don't you just write a book? Why don't you just get your information out there in one hit?" And I thought, actually, I might try that.
Yeah.
So to cut a long story short, I learned how to write a book because it's not as simple as just sitting down and starting on page one and finishing when you finish. There's a lot that goes into writing a book. So I attended a course on how to write a book, and then I started putting it all together and started to shape the book. Got a publisher as well that helped me along those lines. The inspiration as well was there because I felt that, and I say this in the book as well, I felt that there's a lot of books that were published, really good books as well. I'm not going to dismiss any books that have been published about DevOps because they're brilliant books. You've got the books like the DevOps Handbook by Jim Kim, Jez Humble and co. You also have the great fiction books that were written by by Jim Kim as well, the Phoenix Project and the Unicorn Project. Although Unicorn Project I don't think was out at the time. So these are really good books on DevOps. But I always felt that they never went far enough in explaining security and what DevSecOps is. And DevSecOps has become a term. It's become something that people are saying. There are companies that are using that word DevSecOps. And I felt, well, actually, do we know what it means? Do we understand it? And that's where the inspiration came from, was to actually try and put down on paper and share what I've learned about what I think DevSecOps is. And it just so happened I had a few people that agreed with what I was trying to do, and they contributed to my book as well. So great talent out there that helped me put the book together, and that's really why I wanted to write something on DevSecOps. A second motivator for me as well is that I wanted to make it accessible to as many people as I could.
Yeah.
I didn't want it to be too technical, so it's just for developers. I didn't want it to be too business convoluted, business stuff. So it was just really for the managers. So I really wanted it to be something that people could associate with by, in the position that they're working in. So for example, I called it a leader's guide. What is a leader? A leader is somebody who leads. It doesn't necessarily have to be a manager. It could be somebody within the team that says, you know what, we should be doing something a bit different, and starts to drive that. So that's what I meant by leader. And I just wanted to get to, produce something which people could understand and relate to quite quickly, and fill some of the gaps that people might have about what DevSecOps means. So that's basically the reason why I did it, and also creating that layered approach to doing DevSecOps.
Well, you definitely did. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, as I said, I'm not sure if I mentioned it while we were live, but for someone like me that's not an expert, it's very understandable. It's easily digestible. You've got, graphics for explaining certain concepts and things like that. I found it really helpful. I must ask, just apart from the facts of the source material and what's actually within the book, writing a book itself, I mean, from beginning to end, that's first of all, congratulations, because it must be quite a nice it's like a bucket list thing, I think a lot of people in their life, they want to write a book, and they never get around to doing it. So I think you grabbed the bull by the horns and you really went for it, and it shows. How long did it take you to write the book, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so I started writing the articles so the articles became some of the content from the book. So I started writing these articles in about March 2020, literally right at the beginning of the pandemic.
Perfect timing.
Perfect. It was perfect timing.
Yeah.
And it was published in December that same year. I'd
Wow.
say that it probably took me about 4 months to write, and then
Sure.
all the copy editing, proof editing, rewriting a lot of the stuff that didn't quite flow. Um, so yeah, probably about 4 months, maybe 5 or 6 if you include all the copy editing and stuff like that.
I get the
And
feeling
then
that you had all of this information just kind of waiting, sitting there, waiting to be kind of shared, because 4 months is actually it's a lot quicker than I was expecting.
yeah, yeah, I did have a lot of material, but also I reached out to a lot of people
Yeah.
to ask them questions. So you'll see if you read the book, you'll see that I've included opinions from different people.
Yeah.
Um, because this happened during the pandemic, and I just finished a piece of work with a client, I did actually take a bit of a sabbatical in order to write the book. I was fortunate that I had that ability to do that. So I took a bit of a sabbatical break from actually work. So that was another thing. I mean, it was a 9 to 5. Well, I'll say 9 to 5. It was probably more closer to 8 till 8 job every day,
Wow.
writing, researching, interviewing, um,
Nice.
and so yeah. So 4 months. I don't think I could have done it if I was in a full-time work and
Yeah.
just doing it in the evenings. It would have taken a couple of years, but four
Yeah.
months because I was able to work on it pretty much constantly for for the whole time.
Yeah. Nice, man. Well, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Was there any sort of problem or issue you were trying to address with this book? Was there a goal behind it?
Yeah, I think that the main goal for me really was to break down some of the myths, particularly around tooling. Um, Quite often, I said earlier that I was co-host of a meetup about DevSecOps. We quite often had people come along and present tools to us.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing as well, and I probably was guilty of this at the start, we create that infinity loop that is synonymous with DevOps, and we stick security in it by attaching all these different tools around it. So if you're doing development, you stick SAST on it. If you're doing a build, you put DAST and IAST on it. If you do deployment, you stick, whatever else on it. All the way around, you've got these tools.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's been an explosion of tools over the last 3, 4, 5 years in the DevSecOps space. I mean, there's a graphic I think which shows all the tools, security tools that are now available. It's just it's amazing how many tools there are,
Yeah.
um, and that just for me just says that it's complex. It's why have we added so much complexity to an already difficult problem?
Yeah.
I felt that actually we don't really want to throw tools at the problem. It's not that. There's other ways we can address security when we're doing DevOps. And for me, the key factors were education, making sure that we have a process to learn, and not necessarily just about security, but just be able to learn and evolve as individuals that are writing these products or building these products and services.
Yeah.
Um, so that education is a main factor. Having quality built into what we're doing as well, rather than just writing something just to get it out the door, let's think about the quality that we're putting into the products, and that goes back to the manufacturing industry. If you think about cars, one of the reasons why Toyota did so well in the 1960s, 70s is because they built quality, and the quality overrode the mass production of the Fords and the GMs. It was the
Yeah.
quality that was important. So if we focus on quality, you're going to get better products and you're going to get more secure products. And then the final layer was the tooling. So, okay, we do have education, we do have good quality products that we're developing. Now, how do we make sure that we catch those outliers and verify that what we're actually developing is relatively secure? But
Yeah.
by by already having a capacity in terms of the education and the quality, we know what we're looking for. We know what we don't need to look for because we know that we've built that in, so to speak.
Yeah.
So tooling needs to be fit for purpose. And it's a cycle as well. So the tools will identify where we have issues, and those issues can then feed back into the education program. Once you've fed that back into the education program, then you go through the whole cycle again of building good quality code, testing again, and you keep on cycling around like that. I even go as far to say that you could even get away with not using tools if you were able to build unit tests around some of the security discoveries you had. So some static analysis tools.
Yeah.
Quite often, the criticism about static analysis tools is that they're very difficult to configure to keep out false positives. And they might create a whole list of vulnerabilities, and then it becomes a vulnerability management exercise, not a security exercise, and that's a different problem altogether. So that was the main problem I'm trying to solve. Really, is that tools were the focus, and I just didn't think that was right.
Yeah. Look, this might sound silly, but I'm curious, why are you trying to highlight that people shouldn't rely so heavily on tools? I mean, there must be benefits to actually, incorporating security throughout your DevOps process without the use of tools. If you can,
you do need tools, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't use tools. That is a fundamental part of what we're doing, but we shouldn't be driving our security using tools. So tools are there as something that helps us maintain the security.
Yeah.
What I find is that there's a lot of companies out there that are doing tooling. A lot of these companies are very heavily funded by VCs. And these VCs, because they're pumping so much money into the industry, they're awash with this money and they're spending it on marketing. They're pushing their products hard. And they're not really, they're not trying to drive down security in that respect. They're trying to push their tools out there. They're trying to, to tell people that these are the tools. It might sound controversial, but that's my opinion. I feel like that perhaps there are some good products out there. Don't get me wrong, there are some great products out there. But there's also a lot of products out there that are not so good. And I feel that we just need to know when to use the tools. It's like if you go into a hardware shop, and you want to put a screw into a piece of wood, right? You don't go in there and buy a whole tool set in order to screw that. But that's what you're being told to do. It's like you go into a shop, it's like being told, oh look, you've got the screw, but you also need a hammer, you need a drill, you need this. We're trying to do the same thing with tooling. The vendors are doing the same thing. It's like saying, well, so you want to try and discover these vulnerabilities, but we can also do SEA, we can also do this and this and this and this. And quite often it doesn't really fit what you're trying to do. It does not fit the purpose, and there's a lot of money that you're spending on tools that perhaps doesn't need to be spent.
I believe, sorry, I just want to pause for a second. I'm getting a message from a colleague of mine saying I'm not showing up in LinkedIn. I see myself. Seems to be working. Sorry about this. Okay, I'm just going to carry on. It seems to be working fine for myself. Another question I wanted to ask you, and this is going to be quite a touchy subject, but we spoke very vaguely in the weeks leading up to this, and that is something that I've been dealing with regularly on a regular basis, is that finding that security has this negative connotation inside of an organization, right? It's kind of like, oh, got to worry about that now. That's the kind of attitude that I have been picking up on. Am I right in this opinion? Am I?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Now, at the time of this recording or this chat, we're just on the back end of a breach that was announced by Uber. And I want to bring this one up because this is quite interesting. So Uber got breached, and it's quite the actual attack vector was actually quite an easy attack vector to defend against. And my understanding as well that in a very short space of time, huge amounts of data were extracted from Uber. We're talking about petabytes, so we're talking about a lot of data, which begs the question: is where was the security? And on the back of that, I've seen in the last week, I've seen, and do forgive me if there is anyone from Uber and wants to correct me, then please do so. But I have seen job adverts
Yeah.
for people at Uber in the last week, which
Yeah.
suggests to me that they've suddenly taken security seriously.
Yeah.
Way too late to save them from a very embarrassing breach.
Yeah.
So yes, companies are not taking security seriously, and I think we're seeing a lot of people get caught out by it. You know, it is a challenge. It is a challenge because security is not visible. It's not a visible. It's not a tangible asset. Um, if you're developing a feature, your product owners, your business, they can see that feature. They can even probably understand how much revenue that feature is generating, and therefore
Yes.
they can put that figure, put those figures together. How much you're spending on it, and how much you're getting back.
Yes.
Security is different. It's like insurance. We don't know how much we're going to be. How much does security cost his company? I was talking to someone yesterday. They're trying to come up with a magic figure and say what that figure is, and so they may find it, they may not, I don't know. But the fact is that we just cannot measure the impact of security. We got all these other measures saying, the average cost of a breach is this, the average cost of a ransomware attack is this, whatever. We've got those averages, but quite often they mean nothing to the individual because they're so big, those numbers, that they don't relate to their smaller companies, but those smaller companies are getting hit just as hard. So yeah, companies don't really take security seriously unless there's the breach. What we really need to do is to start saying that actually it's the measures you can't see that are important, and that is, Uber are going to struggle to get the numbers back up. I can imagine that on the back of this breach, their numbers have just dropped off. I bet the number of people, the number of people who just got rid of the app on their phones has just, it's probably significant. And how long is that going to take them to come back? How long is it going to take them to grow back to a level that they feel comfortable with? I'm not sure if they're ever going to reach the same level again. They might do, but it might take several years. So that's the cost to Uber, but they can't measure that. You can't measure how much that's costing. They might be able to measure it in the short term and say, well, this month we're so many $1 million down. But what's the impact over 5 years, 10 years, whatever?
Yeah, there's been a recurring theme through all of our chats that we've had on LinkedIn now, and it's that a reputation and security are kind of linked. They're like a couple holding hand in hand, and the moment we spoke about confidentiality, availability, and integrity, and every time you just can't ignore the fact that a company's reputation and the security of the company, they really do go hand in hand. I mean, exactly like as you've said, after this breach now, the numbers are just, I mean, we don't know for sure, but it's safe to assume that they've gone way down. And the reputation, you think, that reputation, to build it back up, that people start having that trust again with their personal data, it takes a long time. And like you said yourself, you can't actually guarantee that it'll ever go back to exactly the same. I've got a note here, and it touches on perfectly what you were talking about, that the cost of fixing security bugs or issues gets more expensive every time you shift it to the right. So the later on that you find these bugs and these security issues, it's just exponentially more expensive. I saw a graph on LinkedIn this week, and it represented it perfectly. I mean, I can only imagine what something like this is costing Uber at the moment.
Yeah, a lot of money.
I want to think about it.
But also you got to, and I'll touch upon this in the book as well, you've got to look at the ethical nature of the breach as well. We entrust our data to these big organizations, big companies. Now I've been a victim of a breach myself, which had nothing to do with me. I was ordering a flight through the British Airways app, and I just so happened to book it at the time when the British Airways app was being breached.
Wow.
And of course, we didn't know that as a customer. I didn't know that. So my credit card details were stolen. Luckily, because I'm working in the industry, I was very tuned into the news, and I was able to cancel my card almost immediately. So very limited impact to me, but I still felt like I trusted British
Yeah.
Airways with my data, and
Yeah.
they were unable to protect it for me. So
Yeah.
you've got this moral obligation to look after your customers' data, and I think that's something which you also need to think about. You know what you said about reputation is it's the same thing. You know, morally, you have the obligation to look after your customers' data. If you don't, you're going to be you're not going to be reputable in the industry. So
Yeah.
you need to think about, you know, okay, there are companies out there that deliberately take data and use it in ways that we perhaps don't like. You think of the big, the big companies like Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, those sort of companies. They take our data,
Yeah.
and they use it for their own marketing benefits. And as we found as well, they sometimes sell our data.
Yeah.
Which, but what I was trying to say is that you know, we do need to think about our moral obligation to our customers as well.
So I want to bring this back and relate it to DevSecOps really quickly, and have quickly brush over our next topic for the 7th of October, which we'll be having an overview of the layered approach to effective DevSecOps. And the layer one that you've outlined here in the book is importance of security education. I think this doesn't really classify as security education. This is more just awareness. But I think I can tie Inevitable quite nicely to this. Is our main goal is to bridge this gap between security and DevOps. And we're diving headfirst into this layer one, you know, the importance of security education. So using the incident with Uber as an example, how can you bring it back to, you know, security awareness and DevSecOps?
Yeah, I mean, security awareness is actually changing. It's like a mindset shift within the organization. You know, DevOps is not just about the developers and the operations developing the products. It's about the whole company. You know,
Yeah,
the company's goal, the company's vision is to produce secure software, and it's also to protect the assets that go into that software. So, um, you know, a phishing attack could happen to anybody in the organization, and you know, so you need that security awareness across the
yeah,
whole level. But you know, imagine if a security, an attacker was able to access the accounts of somebody within your company that had no access to a development machine, right? But then they was able to elevate privileges through, you know, their own skills as a hacker, and they were able to find a route into your development environment, and then start to embed payloads into your software or into your pipeline. Then you've got a problem with DevOps channel, and that's where security comes into it. You know, because you need good controls to try and find those particular issues. But it starts from that, you know, making people aware that everybody in the organization has their obligation towards security.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I think that's something which is important. The education piece as well. Education needs to be fit for purpose. So it's no good sending everybody on a course for 5 days and expecting them to come back and say, yeah, we're secure. Education is an iterative process. It's a continuous process of learning.
yeah,
You know, if there's an incident, let's learn from it. Even if the incident is minor, let's still learn from it. Let's see it where what lessons could be learned, um, and still carry on building that knowledge base that we have within the organization. And the knowledge base will change behavior, and behavior is culture. So if you start to build up that knowledge, changing behavior, you change the culture of the organization. So education for me is absolutely critical in doing DevSecOps, but not only developers and the operations guys, but across the whole organization.
very, very well said, Glenn. Very well said. And that brings us to the end of this Friday's episode. Let me just check before we wrap up. I want to make sure that there's no questions or anything like that for us. All I see here is from Dominique. raising awareness for DevSecOps. Nice, guys. Greetings from Poland. Greetings to you, Dominique, as well. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Glenn, I can't thank you enough. It's been a real pleasure having you. And yeah, thank you for all your insights.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me on the channel, on the chat.
Hopefully we can reconnect and do this again either late in the year or next year sometime.
I'd love to. Thank you.
But wishing everyone a nice weekend, and thanks for joining.
Bye-bye.